all. Shabbat Shalom. So we'll see. Saturday morning, I did not.
give thanks to you, O God, for this Shabbat day, which unites us as a community of faith and hope. The holiness of Shabbat, which can lead us to fulfill the best that is in us, we give thanks. For the memories of Shabbat, enriched by generations of our people, who observed it and from it drew courage to face hardships and light to banish darkness, we are grateful. We offer thanks for the peace of Shabbat, today consecrated to family love. O God, our coming to you exalts our humanity. You are the joy of our life, the source of its greatness, its power, and its beauty. Help us, O God, to find inspiration for the coming weeks. Help us to find peace within ourselves.
Continue on page 292. Anyone who can go with anyone, read that. 292.
The soul. The soul that you have given me, O God, is pure. You created and formed it, breathed it into me, and within me you sustain it. So long as I have breath, therefore, I will give thanks to you, my God and the God of all ages, source of all being, loving guide of every human spirit.
Daily miracles, I would invite anyone to share what some of the good things are that are happening in our lives.
Even though I was up in Connecticut to see my youngest son, but the other woman came up also, and it was like a semi-family reunion. My woman, John was there, and my two grandsons, and it's not only a delight, but it's very important for the Jewish family.
I'm just going to repeat that so those who didn't hear. Being up with family, like a semi-family reunion, being with children and grandchildren. Others, everyday miracles or wonderful things.
I'm currently downsizing my house, and I wanted to find a home for all the plays and the theater material that we collected over the years. We finally wrote the theater department, but we accepted all of that.
Wonderful. So, in downsizing your home, finding a home for the theater and plays that will make use of it and enjoy it and thrive. That's very nice. And it's a win-win. It's a win-win situation. You downsize and they gain. Yeah. Other things to share? If you're watching us remotely and you have something good, everyday miracle that you'd like to share in the chat, we invite you to do so. I will share that while I was not with all of you last Shabbat, it was my pleasure to host our East Coast family over Thanksgiving weekend, and that was really special to see parts of our family that, you know, over the years when we lived in the Midwest, we didn't get to see quite as often, so that was really special. And so we continue on page 293 as we offer these blessings of our daily miracles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech bivina lehavchin vein yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokev kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech Asani Bachorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. On page 298, would someone like to lead this? Would you like to lead? Page 298.
These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
We continue on page 302. Page 302. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodo le'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodo le'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Lahagid b'boker chastecha, ve'emunatecha balelot, alei asor va'aleina, ve'alei higayon b'chinor. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodo le'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simachtani Adonai b'po'alecha, b'ma'aseh yadecha aranein, magadlu ma'asecha Adonai me'od, amku machshevotecha. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodo le'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. As we continue now with Ashrei on page 303. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yahalelucha selah. Ashrei ha'am shekacham lo, Ashrei ha'am sh'Adonai Elohav. Tila leDavid, aromimcha Elohai hamelech, v'avarcha shimcha le'olam va'ed. B'chol yom avarchecha, v'yalela shimcha le'olam va'ed. Gadol Adonai Hulal Me'od, V'li Gdulato Ein Cheker, Dor L'dor Yishabach Ma'asecha, Uvrotecha Yagidu, Adar Kevod Hodecha, V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha, V'zuz Norotecha Yomeru, Udv'laka Asaprena, Zecher Rabtucha Yabiu, V'tzitchacha Yiranenu, Chanun V'rachum Adonai, Erech Apayim Ugdo Chased, Tov Adonai Lakol, V'rachamav Al Kol Ma'asav, Yoduch Adonai Kol Ma'asecha, V'chasidecha Yivarchucha, Yevod Malchucha Yomeru, Uv'raka Yidaberu, L'hodia Livnei Adam Gevurotav, Ukvod Hadar Malchuto, Malchutcha Malchut Kol Olamim, Umem Shaltecha B'chol Dor Vador, Tomech Adonai L'kol Hanoflim, V'zokech L'kol Hakfufim, Einei Chol Elecha Yisaberu, Ve'ata Noten Lahem Et Ochlam B'ito, Poteach Et Yadecha, U'maspiach L'kol Chai Ratzon, Tzadik Adonai B'chol Durachav, V'chasid B'chol Ma'asav, Karov Adonai L'chol Korav, L'chol Asher Yikra'u Be'emet, Ritzon Yireav Yaseh, Ve'et Shavatam Yishma V'yoshiem, Shomer Adonai Et Kol Oavav, Ve'et Kol HaRashaim Yashmid, Vilat Adonai Yidaber Pi, Vivarei Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed, V'hanachnu Nivarech Yah, Me'ata V'ad Olam, Hallelujah. And on page 308, if someone next would like to read the reading at the top and the bottom of the page. Page 308, would you like to do that?
We acknowledge that you alone awaken the sleeping, arouse those who are not alert, give speech to the mute, and you loosen the bonds of captives, supporting the fallen, and strengthening those who are bent over. You alone do we acknowledge. Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, and our tongues full of joy and countless waves, and our lips full of praise as wide as the sky's expanse, and were our eyes to give off light like the sun and moon, if our hands were spread out like heaven's eagles, and our feet swift like young deer, we could never thank you adequately, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, or bless your name for 1,000ths of the many thousands or tens of thousands, the countless times that you granted good things to our ancestors and to us.
You can go ahead.
Therefore, these limbs which you have formed in us, and this spirit and soul that you have breathed into our nostrils, this tongue which you have set in our mouths, they must acknowledge, bless, praise, glorify, exalt, express adulation, sanctify, and enthrone your name, O our sovereign. For every mouth we will acknowledge you, and every tongue pledge homage to you. Every knee bend in your presence, and all that stands shall bow before you.
As we turn now to page 312 for Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, u'chayedechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala, uvizman karib, v'meru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'olam u'lo me'amaya, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yit'aleh, v'yithalal, shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'la min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yamha, v'meru amen. as we're able, we rise for Baruch Hu. Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. On page 313 in the middle. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam b'chochma asita mala ha'aretz kinyanecha titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha ve'al me'orei or sha'asita yifarucha selah. Or chadash al Tzion tahir v'nizkechu lanu me'era le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot. As we continue on page 318. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. May be seated. On page 319. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha, vidibarta bam, vishivtecha b'veitecha, uvlektecha b'derech, uvshochbecha uvkumecha, ukshartam le'ot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot beineinecha, uktabtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. On page 321, someone like to take that reading? $321. Sing the song.
Sing the song of men and women, join in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, and each protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generation to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to live no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, no rat tehilot osei peleh, no rat tehilot osei peleh. Shir chadasha shibechul ye'ulim, l'shimcha al sfat hayom, yachad kulam hodu, V'himlichu ve'ameru Adonai imlo le'olam va'ed Adonai imlo le'olam va'ed Ya la 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 ya la ya ya la 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 Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. As we are able, we rise for the tefillah on page 323. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fiyah ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei Avoteinu Imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanurah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah Rab le'Hoshia, Mashiv ha'ruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim veropeh cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha bal gevurot, umido melach, Melech memit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atalach hayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam Kishem shemamtishim oto bishmei marom Kakatuv ayad neviecha v'karazel ze v'amar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai tzivahot Melocho ha'aretz Kivodo Adir adirenu Adonai, Adonenu madir shimcha b'chol haaretz. Baruch kivod Adonai mimkomo. Echadu Eloheinu, hu Avinu hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu v'hu Yashmienu, b'rachamav le'nei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Zion, Lidor vador, Hallelujah. Lidor vador nagid god lecha, ulenetzach nitzachim kedushacha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. May be seated. On page 329. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Mekadashei Shavi Shabbat, Kulam Yisbe'u, V'yitangu Metuvecha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemdad yamim, oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Zecher lemase v'reishit Shabbat. Zecher lemase v'reishit Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. On page 329 at the bottom, maybe the next reader.
The meaning of Shabbat is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live under the tyranny of things of space. On Shabbat, we try to become attuned to holiness in time. It is a day on which we are called upon to share in what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
And so we continue our prayer now silently through pages 337 or throughout other prayers in the prayer book. And another option is to pray those prayers that are the meditations in our hearts. Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chen v'chesed, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim, Chen v'chesed, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Amelcha, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha. We turn now in our prayer book to page 364 as we turn to Seder Kriyat HaTorah for the reading of the Torah. As we are able, we rise. And Sari and Jacqueline, would you like to come up to open the ark, please? Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udevar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu l'Adonai iti uneromemo Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula v'hagevura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod. Ki chol bashamayim u'ba'aretz, ki chol bashamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha li'amit na'aseh lechol erosh. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omed. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omed. Our Torah portion for this Shabbat is called Vayetze. Vayetze, it's where Jacob goes out, and so many wonderful things happen in this Torah portion. He's going out because he got the blessing instead of his older brother Esau, and his mother says, you better get out of there and go find yourself a wife. So he goes back to sort of the family's place of origin in Haran, and he's looking for a wife. He has a dream on the way. He finds God. He makes a bargain with God. He meets Rachel at the well. He ends up marrying Leah and Rachel and having a number of children. And the part I'm going to be reading to you this morning that we'll read from the Torah comes from Genesis chapter 29, verse 21 and following, on page 200. And this is where Jacob's about to wake up the next morning and discover who his bride is. Some of you know the answer already. So for our Aliyah, let me just see where we are. Here we go. For our Aliyah, would somebody like to have the honor this morning? And you can pass the microphone to that person. Or you could come up, actually. You want to do it all together? Or two people are going together? Okay.
Yeah.
So your Hebrew names, come on up if you want. Oh, wonderful. Okay. And your Hebrew name is?
Yitzchak ben Moshe.
Na'ala Amod, Yitzhak ben Moshe,
Herschel ben Benjamin.
Herschel ben Binyamin, Levarech ala Torah, Aliyah Rishona.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. If you want to follow along, you can watch the Torah too, because it's right here.
Oh,
You don't need the book.
without vowels.
Oh, you want to look with the vowels?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Okay. Vayomer Yaakov el Lavan, Havei et ishti ki malu yamai va'avoeha eleha, v'ye'asof Lavan et kol anshe hamakom vayas mishte. Vayehi va'erev vayikach et Leah vito vayave ota ela vayavo eleha vayiten Lavan la et Zilpa shifrato laleah vito shifra. Vayehi vaboker v'hine hi Leah. Vayomer el Lavan mazot asita li. Halo berachel avadati imach. V'lama remitani. Vayomer Lavan lo yeaseh chen bimkomenu. Latet hatzi'ira lifnei habichira. Malei shavua zot, v'natna lecha gam et zot. Ba'avoda asher ta'avod imadi, od sheva shanim achirot. Vayas Yaakov chen, vayimalei shavua zot, vayitein lo et Rachel, bito lo liisha. Blessing afterwards.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yesher koach.
Thank you.
Yesher koach.
God bless.
And so we turn our thoughts and prayers to those who are in need of healing as we turn to page 371 in the middle of the page. For those who are watching through the blessing of technology, I invite you to add those names to the chat at this time. And if you're here in the congregation, you can share names aloud after I share these people in our extended Adith Emmanuel family for whom we ask a blessing of healing. Audrey Pomerantz, Robert Levine, Cy Kliansky, Marlene Kaplan, Judy Richter, Susan Hubble, Harry Kushner, Jordan Maverick Steinberg, Deanna Amariello, Lisa Galda, Brian Zabel, Ed Crosby, Jonathan Burr, Myra Kaplan, Jeff Schaefer, Lulu Rivuela, Marion Gwertz, Aaron Tepper, Lily Tepper, Joan Major, Karen Bowen, Louis Alahut, Mary Parker, Tricia Tepper, Carol Schaefer, Mary Mednitsky, Jocelyn Jackson, Jen Jones, Shirley Friedlander, Michael Infanti, Gary Garnick, Nick Bod, Ann Marsden, Rick Ulrich, Ileana Cohn, and other names of people for whom we would like to send our blessings of healing. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Ve'imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. we rise now as we lift and dress Torah. Larry, would you come up and help me, please? V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe, v'zot HaTorah, v'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe, v'zot HaTorah, lifnei b'nei Yisrael, v'zot HaTorah, al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe, v'zot HaTorah, v'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe, v'zot HaTorah, v'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe, v'zot HaTorah, lifnei b'nei Yisrael, v'zot HaTorah, al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe, v'zot HaTorah, v'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe, v'zot HaTorah. May be seated. And if you want to follow along, the blessings are on page 372 and page 344 in the Torah commentary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar binvi'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem הנאמרים באמת, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו, ובישראל עמו, ובנביאי האמת והצדק.
Jacob fled to the land of Aram. Israel served for a wife, and for a wife he kept watch of sheep. By the prophet the Eternal brought Israel up from Egypt, and by a prophet they were watched. Ephraim caused bitter anger, and because of his blood guilt, his sovereign abandoned him and paid him back for his scorn. When Ephraim spoke with trembling, he was lifted high in Israel, but through Baal he incurred guilt and died. They add sin to sin, making themselves molten images, skillfully making idols, the work of artisans throughout. They speak to them. To images of calves, which people sacrificed, they offered kisses. Therefore they shall be like the morning cloud, like the dew so quickly gone, like straw driven as by a storm from a threshing floor, like smoke out of a hole in the wall. Yet I, the Eternal, have been your God ever since the land of Egypt. You have known no real God but me. There is no Savior besides me. I knew you in the wilderness, in a land of blazing heat. When you grazed and were sated, you grew proud, and therefore you forgot me. So I have become like a lion to you, like a leopard lurking near the road. Like a bear robbed of its cubs, I will meet you and tear away the casing of your heart. There, like a lion, I will devour you. Wild beasts shall tear you to pieces. You are done for, Israel, for who can help you? Where then is your king? Let him save you in all your towns. Where are the leaders of your towns for whom you asked, saying, give me a king, give me leaders? In my wrath I gave you a king. In my fury I removed him. Ephraim's inquiry is stored up. His sin is preserved. Birth pains came for him, but he is an unwise babe. For when the time comes, he does not present himself at the birthplace of babes. I will redeem them from the grave. I will save them from death. Where are your plagues, O death? Where is your pestilence, O grave? Vengeance shall be hidden from my eyes, for he only among the reeds shall be fruitful. An east wind shall come, a divine wind up from the wilderness, so that his fountain may dry up, and his spring shall be parched. It shall pillage treasures, every choice thing. Samaria must bear her guilt, for she has rebelled against her God. They will fall to the sword, their little ones dashed to pieces, their women with child ripped open. Return, O Israel, to the eternal your God, for you have stumbled in your iniquity. Take words with you and return to the eternal and say, forgive all iniquity and accept the good, and we shall offer the fruit of our lips. Assyria cannot save us. We shall ride on horses no more. Never again shall we say, O God, to the works of our hands. For in you alone the orphan finds compassion. I will heal their disloyalty. I will love them freely. For my wrath has turned away from them. I will be like dew to Israel. They shall blossom like a lily and strike roots like the trees of Lebanon. Their shoots shall spread out wide, their splendor like an olive tree's, their fragrance like that of Lebanon. Those who sit in the shade shall return to me. They shall grow their corn and blossom like a vine, renowned as the wine of Lebanon. Ephraim shall say, what are the idols to me now? I will respond and look to him, for I am a luxuriant cypress, from which your fruit is found. The wise shall understand these things, the discerning shall know them, that straight are the ways of the eternal, while the righteous walk in them, transgressors stumble on them.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, ha'el haneman, ha'omer ve'oseh, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Yeah, Ephraim is so remember Ephraim and Manasseh were sons of Joseph. So Manasseh and Ephraim, like Jacob, can be a metaphor for the Israelite. And so turning back to our Torah portion, deception is a theme that we see weave its way throughout Jacob's life. He is a deceiver and he is deceived, which is no surprise because deception seems to run in the family. The verses from this morning's Torah portion, Vayetze, which I read, include one of these examples in which Jacob is the one being deceived. So Jacob's uncle, soon-to-be employer, soon-to-be father-in-law, Laban, switches daughters on Jacob, and he marries, so Jacob ends up marrying Leah, the older sister, instead of Rachel, the younger sister, the one whom Jacob loves and whom Laban promised to Jacob. And so the verses I read are, then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my time is fulfilled, that I may cohabit with her. And Laban gathered all the people of the place and made a feast. And when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and he cohabited with her. Laban had given his maidservant Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her maid. And when morning came, there was Leah. And so Jacob said to Laban, what is this you've done to me? I was in your service for Rachel. Why did you deceive me? Laban said, oh, it's not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the older. Wait until the bridal week of this one is over, and we will give you that one too, provided you serve me another 7 years. So Jacob did so. He waited out the bridal week of one, and then Laban, gave him, Jacob, his daughter Rachel, as a wife. So quick trivia question. When they say, how many years was it before Jacob got to marry Rachel? A lot of people say 14 years. But if you read the text really closely, it's 7 years plus 1 week, right? Because Rachel was able to then marry Jacob at the end of the week. However, Jacob was still in servitude, if you will, to Laban for those additional 7 years. So we see, if we look at the plain sense, the text of our story, that Laban deceives Jacob. He gives him Leah instead of Rachel, when that was not the verbal transaction earlier on. And as I mentioned earlier, deception seems to run in the family. By the way, Laban, we said he's Jacob's uncle, is Rebekah's sibling. So Rebekah was the one who said, come here, Jacob. Your father's about to give your brother this blessing. Let's get some fur on your arms. I'm going to quickly make a stew, and you go to your father and get that blessing before your brother comes back. And that's exactly what happens. Jacob gets the blessing, and even through the whole blessing, Isaac says, who is this? Who is this? Because Isaac at the time is blind, so he's using his other senses. He's sensing the feel, the sense of touch, and feels that Jacob is, or the son before him is indeed hairy, which Esau was known to be. So it's really Rebekah who's instrumental in that deception plot, and Jacob goes along. And if we even went back before that, there was one time that Esau came in from the field, and he was starving, he was so hungry, and he said, Jacob, I'm so hungry. And Jacob, who was known to be a man of the tent at home, he was cooking a delicious stew, and Esau came in, famished, and he said, so, give me the stew, I'll give you my birthright. So, or Jacob says, sell me your birthright. So it's kind of straightforward, but it's a little deceptive. It's taking advantage, right? Okay, you want something to eat? Give me something really important to you that you can never take back, your birthright, because Esau was born first. And we see, that's another theme that runs through the book of Genesis, how the younger seems to wind on top instead of the older. Except here in the story of Leah and Rachel, we actually see a flip on that. Leah does get her firstborn right for marrying Jacob. So that's another deception. And even at the end of this week's Torah portion, so after Jacob has done this 14-year stint, and he's become this amazing shepherd, he knows all the tricks of the trade, he's gained a lot of wealth because having sheep is your wealth. And he decides he's going to leave Laban. He doesn't tell Laban he's leaving, so maybe that's another little deception. And he gathers his wife, his kids, his flocks together, and they leave without saying goodbye. But before they leave, Rachel, son of Laban, wife of Jacob, niece of Rebekah, she also does something deceptive. Do you remember what it was? She steals her father's idols before they leave. So Rachel steals her father's idols, and then when they're camping along the way, and Laban realizes you left without saying goodbye, he catches up with them. He said, "Oh, if you had done this, if you had told me you were leaving, I would have given you a song and a farewell party." And Jacob's not convinced about that. He's convinced he would have had to leave, and Laban would have kept everything, including his wives, for himself. But meanwhile, Laban says that, but what he's really after is his idols are gone. And he's looking and he's rummaging through all the different camps. Meanwhile, Rebecca has hidden the idols in her cushion, and she's sitting down on the cushion. And Laban is searching around the tent, and she says, "Sorry, Dad, I can't get up. It's the time of women." And so Laban searches around. He doesn't find the idols anywhere. But we see that Rachel is, she's learned deception from the family, right? So that's another example. And if that weren't enough, we also see that later in life, right, when Jacob has his children, and the brothers are very jealous of Joseph, and they're ready to kill him, right? They sell Joseph down to Egypt in slavery, but they come back home, and what do they tell Papa Jacob? "Oh, yes, your son Joseph, whom you love so much, he was killed by a wild animal." So we see this deception, and it goes in a cycle. Those who are deceivers will be deceived. Goldie. Well, that's my question. What role do you believe that lying, cheating, deceiving has in the story of Jacob and the Jewish people? These are our forebearers, right? How do we respond to that? Which acts maybe are unforgivable, or which acts are less offensive, or we needed those acts so that we could become this people, the B'nai Israel, right? Next week, Jacob's going to get his name changed to Israel, and we are the children of Jacob, the children of Israel. So that's the question at hand, and I think the microphone's up here. Oh, you got it? Great. So those are the questions. What role do you feel that Goldie has posed to us, and which acts might be unforgivable, which are less offensive? Do you want to pass the mic to Goldie?
I think it also shows that nobody's perfect. These are human beings, and they're doing very human things.
So we often see that our characters in the Bible are flawed. They're human beings, right? So are some of these forgivable then?
I think this goes for every statue that we've raised and every person that we've put up there as idols. And when we find out they're human, we bring them down. And I think by recognizing it here and understanding that they're not there because of their cheating and lying, but because what they did do on the positive side, that makes them worthy of being our forebearers.
So looking at our characters, not putting spotlights necessarily on their flaws, understanding that the flaws are there, but raising them up as role models because of the good that they did. Okay. Other thoughts?
This is Ivan Rudolph, which you know. You must get tired of hearing me say this, but I think this is a typical example because I have thought about it a lot. How can God entrust the fate of the Jewish people to Jacob? He is such a weasel. He manages to steal this, that, and the other. And I came to the conclusion that God picks the one who is most devoted to him. He must believe in him implicitly and accept his word and be willing to live his life that way, because that's the strong character that's going to carry the flow of the Jewish people.
So
he picks Isaac, the homebody, instead of the strong Esau. He picked Abraham because he believes him.
You mean
He is
Ish-
willing to travel out of his homeland and establish a new place. And Jacob, he has a dream, and he immediately realized with the angels going up and down the ladder, he says, this is a holy place. And he makes a tribute stone, and he oils it, and he builds it. You know, he is a strong believer in God. He is unwavering in his belief. And I think that's why Jacob gets picked out, despite his habits.
I'll just add that Jacob also had doubt. Remember at the beginning of the story, as he goes out, Vayetze, he says, he does this little conditional thing. If, God, you protect me on my journey, and if you make my mission a success, and if you return me safely to my home, then you'll be my God. And so Jacob had to experience these encounters with God, like the dream, and say, aha, this is none other than the place of God, before he was going to embrace God. And I think that is very human, and I would include myself in the category of people who doubt the existence of God, right? Is Jacob, I think Jacob starts out agnostic, I think so. And then he acknowledges the presence of God. But I think for those who are theists, who do believe in God, that there are points in our lives, and I'm saying our because I'm describing myself, where how can that be? How can God exist? How can, and somehow it, at some point coming back. Did you want to share something?
The question I have is, this is way before the Ten Commandments. This is way before a lot of acknowledgments of God I don't want to use the word, as an entity. They were used to, I presume, idolatry at this point in the years that this is taking place. So I think the thought of God was something that may not have been fully manifested at this time. You know, did they believe that an entity created the world? I don't know at that point. They weren't there in Genesis. So the way they were acting and playing their roles may have been something that was quite common back then, as a way to continue on and succeed.
Well,
We
certainly Laban had idols, and
Right.
Rachel, we don't know why Rachel took the idols. Did she steal them just to give a little dig to her father? Or did she take them because, well, maybe she was going to make use of them?
Yeah.
She was not exposed to God the way that Jacob had been
Right.
through Isaac, we assume, and Abraham. So, yeah, the idol worship as a way of life was definitely present right in that, not only in that generation, but in that moment, in that family.
Yeah, and we see it happening. I mean, it's not something that has disappeared. The lying, the cheating, the favoring of one over the other, and so forth. I think that's something that goes on in society to this day. So it's not something that's been learned and cured by the story in the Bible, in the Torah.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts? Thank you.
Larry Marcus. I'd like to bring up the thing with the two sisters. From the very beginning, there's kind of a rivalry when we meet them. Because, again, the younger gets greater influence than the older. And all we hear about Leah is she had weak eyes. We don't hear much else about her. So
We know
somehow-
she's fertile.
What's that?
We know that she's fertile and she can give birth.
Yes, yes.
Later on,
But as
yeah.
far as, it just gives that one statement. And again, it's the older subservient to the younger. The
Right.
struggle between them.
Yeah, definitely. Sibling rivalry is a great theme throughout the book of Genesis. And that leads me to, I want to share 2 midrashim with you that relate to Leah and Rachel because we're looking at this story as if it was Laban who did the trickery, right? He was the deceiver. I have 2 midrashim, one that is ancient and one that is modern. And here's the ancient one that say, well, maybe it wasn't Laban who did the tricking, maybe it was something else. So Rabbi Jonathan said, God's intention was that the birthright should have stemmed from Rachel. Again, we're talking younger, older, right? And I'm skipping some parts. Jacob described himself to Rachel as, and this is from Genesis chapter 29, verse 12. He calls himself Rachel's father's brother. I'm your father's brother. And then he asks, will you marry me? This is now Midrash. And she replies, yes, but my father is a trickster, and you cannot beat him in trickery. Jacob asks, well, how would he trick me? She replied, well, I have an older sister, and he will not have me marry ahead of her. It was then that Jacob said, in trickery, I am your father's brother, because, he's not your father's brother, he's her father's sister, right? Or nephew, right? The father's sister is his mother. Okay. So he says, in trickery, I'm your father's brother. And she asks, but is it proper for a righteous man to resort to trickery? Assuming that Jacob is proper. And he replies, yes. And he gives a quote. The Midrash gives a quote. So Jacob, gives her, Rachel, certain tokens by which to identify herself. But when the wedding night came, Rachel says to herself, now my sister will be humiliated. Okay, Jacqueline, you're paying attention? Because your older sister, you want to make sure she's not going to be humiliated. So she turned the tokens over to her older sister Leah. And hence it is said, and it came to pass in the morning, that behold, it was Leah. So it wasn't Laban's doing the trickery that when Jacob wakes up, what's this, Leah? It was Rachel who helped. She knew that was going to happen. And so Jacob gave her these tokens so that at night, when it was dark and there was no electricity, the bride would present the tokens to the groom and say, it's indeed Rachel. But what Rachel did, because she didn't want to humiliate her older sister, she gave her sister the tokens so that her sister wouldn't be humiliated and they would be married. This is a midrash written in this book called Maybe It Happened This Way. It's written by Rabbi Leah Berkowitz and Eric Wavsaniker. And Rabbi Berkowitz is actually at Kol Ami in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. And I'm just going to share a part of the story that they present. We can't leave my sister here with him, Rachel says. Rachel looked up at Jacob, and not surprisingly, well, let me just pause. We can't leave my sister here with him. So up until now, in this midrashic interpretation, they're really portraying Laban as an evil man, a trickster, only concerned with himself and his wealth, and that he hasn't treated his daughters very well. The quote about Leah's having weak eyes, I don't know if this comes from a more traditional source. It might, that was due to Laban in his anger slamming down some boiled water, and it splashed into Leah's eyes, and that's what made her eyes weak. And he didn't act quickly enough and call 911 to help ease the damage. So that's why she had That's why Leah had weak eyes. So Rachel looks up at Jacob, and not surprisingly to her, he immediately nodded. I've been worrying about that too. Do you think your father will let her come with us? If we say you need her as a companion, he stroked Rachel's hair. Since you're so, young and all, Rachel swatted him, but Leah was already shaking her head because Rachel and Jacob and Leah are all in this conversation together. No, not a chance. He needs me here, says Leah. You definitely keep this household together, Jacob said, which was both kind and an understatement. I think you have to marry her, Jacob, Rachel said. Leah's jaw dropped, but Jacob looked as if it had already crossed his mind too. I won't give up on you, Rachel. I won't give you up, Rachel, he said. I know. I'm not saying marry her instead of me. I'm saying marry her and me. Seeing their skeptical faces, she said, it's not like he'd be the first man around here with more than one wife, right? So we know that during these ancient times, men had more than one wife. That's usually really wealthy men, though, Leah said. Yes, and Jacob has made our family so much wealthier, Rachel said, which is why Father can't afford to make Jacob really mad. I'm thinking if we get Father to pull the trick, or at least get him to think that he's pulling the trick. We replace me with Leah as the bride. And it's pretty easy to do if we have Leah wear the veil that she made for me. No one will see our faces. Then you can pretend to be surprised and outraged when you realize the trick. But by then it's too late. You're married. Then to save face, he'll have to give you to me because he won't want to seem like he pulled out of the deal. And the story goes on, and indeed that's what they do. But it's Rachel's idea and Leah's idea and Jacob's idea, and they put this all together in a way that Laban thinks it's his idea, and lo and behold, in the morning Jacob gets up and he's angry, and Laban gives Rachel as a wife as well. So what's really interesting is when I reflect on this deception cycle, it also makes me feel uncomfortable. Is the Torah teaching us trickery in order to reach our goals and gain success? Maybe that's not the way it exactly unfolded it. Maybe it unfolded the way in this modern midrash, that it was Rachel, Leah, and Jacob's idea. Or maybe it was, as the old midrash says, it was just Rachel's idea. And so it makes me think that we have to read it and read it again, and maybe look for the good points that we can bring out of. And remember that we are human, and when we do encounter those things like deception, that we can rise above them or correct ourselves after those things happen. Shabbat Shalom. As we turn now to, in our Siddur, to page 374, we return the Torah to the Ark. Jacqueline and Sarah, you want to come back up? Help open the Ark. Eitz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem. And we continue now at the bottom of page 586 with Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latet gedula liotzer b'reshit shelo asanu kugoye haratzot velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may close the door. Thank you. And we turn our thoughts and prayers now to those who are in need of healing. And so we turn to pages 598 and 599. If you're watching us through the blessing of technology and want to add the name of a loved one in the chat, please feel free to do so at this time. As we think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, for those who died during this period of Shiva and Shloshim, we mention with fondness Howard Beckerman, husband of Annette Beckerman, Irving Breitner, father of Felice Camaras, Evelyn Natkin, cousin of Rosalie Middleman, as well as those who died at the season in years past, whose yahrzeits we mark on this occasion: Lillian Arkin Smith, Stephen Evans, Stephen Mark Fireman, Thelma Godfrey, Samuel Goodstein, Molly Gordon, Alice Isabel Jaffe, James William Kennedy, Alan Landino, Minnie Levine, Marcella Malamet, Sadie Knappen, Bernice Pernaton, Renee Ratner, Milton Richter, Harry Rosen, Dr. Morris Rudolph, Helen Tiano, William Weiss, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for blessing. We have other names to add at this time. As we continue with the words of mourners Kaddish, Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudasha b'riyachu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata d'amiram v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. As we turn to our closing song, do we have any recommendations?